All right. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Welcome to this month's Patternfly community meeting. And I guess technically it's a week delayed from being March's community meeting. But we have a pretty packed agenda today. I'm going to start by just running through some of the most recent release notes from the releases that happened in March. And then we have a bunch of updates from a bunch of different groups working on Patterfly. So I'm going to also make sure to post the recording of this meeting to YouTube and distribute it on the Patterfly mailing list. So if you're not signed up for that, there is a link to joining the Patterfly mailing list on the last slide in the slide deck, which I'm already presenting. If somebody could drop a link to the slide deck in the chat, that would also be super helpful while I get us started. So let's see, the release notes. I'm not going to walk through every single release note because they're rather lengthy. But the most recent release for Patternfly was milestone 2022.03. And these links bring you to the Patternfly website where you can view the most recent release notes. So if anyone's not aware, under developer resources on the website, there is a page which lists all of our release notes. And they have the release notes for the React code base and for the core HTML and CSS updates in the Patternfly GitHub repo. So like I mentioned, I'm not going to walk through all of these. Like there are a lot of updates here, a lot of changes, many of them small bug fixes, additional demos, demonstrating how to put different components together in certain patterns. But if you want to take a peek at that and have any questions about anything you see on the release notes, feel free to drop the questions in the chat as we go. Some of these, the highlights will be covered in this meeting. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that these release notes are hosted on the website. And I think that is it for my my update. So I will pass it off next to Allison, who has some updates for us as well.
Hi, everyone. This will be pretty quick. We are working on creating more consistency for the component guidelines across Patternfly. And to do that, we are researching and we need participants for it. So if you are interested in research or being a participant for research, please fill out the screen or the form. And if you don't want to, feel free to volunteer someone else or send it to them. Send it to anyone you know. All experience levels are encouraged. So please take a look at that. And that is all.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, next up, I will hand it off to Ivan. He's going to give us a little update on some research we've been doing from user research.
Yeah.
Would you like me to give you screen sharing?
Yeah, I was just going to share my screen.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. So I'm going to try to limit this to like at most 10 minutes just because there's other topics here. But let me go ahead and get this working. All right, cool. Yeah, so this past month in March, we conducted some user research sessions with folks who use the PatternFly website for their work. And we were primarily interested in better understanding challenges and their experiences with both the current layout as well as terminology. Here you can, and I'll put a link to this in the agenda later today after this meeting, but here you can kind of take a look on your own really quickly at the user problem statement, kind of like what we're looking at from the user perspective. So first off, we're interested both in layout and terminology, as I mentioned, just because we're not, we make a lot of assumptions whenever we're designing things, but we're not always, until you get feedback from users, you're not completely certain, what their understanding of our designs are, as well as navigation. That was another key area of focus for this particular study. When it came to the specific research questions, these were primarily categorized into 3 different sections: use cases. So why do people come and use PatternFly? Website, what are they typically looking for on the website? What areas do they use or don't use? Second one is findability. So for different people's use cases, does the current organization of the PatternFly website support, or doesn't support them in accomplishing their tasks? And what are those challenges around there in terms of what they're needing to find? And lastly, and these are all kind of interrelated to verbiage. So for several key terms that we use on the PatternFly website, how do people understand those terms, and are the current terms that we use, is it their preferred term? Is there any confusion around them or not? So these were like the 3 main questions we had. So I'm going to go quickly through some of the main findings, but before, just so you guys have like some idea of how these sessions were conducted, they essentially were one-on-one sessions that were conducted via Zoom. And we ended up talking to 10 people. You can see the role, experience, and PatternFly website usage. All these in general, they vary. Although, just as a note, we had much more designers sign up for this study. There were a few engineers and developers, I think 2. So that's just something to keep in mind as you read through this particular document on your own. And just a little brief, just to kind of put you in that situation in this particular study for you to have a reference of what went on. So first off, of course, collecting demographics information went through first off current use. So questions that helped us understand how people currently use the website and their experiences, their challenges around the current layout of the website. Next, we went through a card sort activity where people essentially sorted the different types of information into buckets and groups in which it makes sense to them. And these pieces of information were essentially things that are currently on the PatternFly website, and they included components, extensions, demos, etc. And the last activity in this 1-hour session was a terminology activity that I'd mentioned. So there were a few terms we were interested in getting user feedback on, and essentially we asked them to select their preferred terms for essentially a set of descriptions. So at a high level, I'm going to go through some of the key findings. So first off, around their general use cases. So this is not anything super surprising, but we found that everybody who currently use a PatternFly website, of those we interviewed, said that their main task involved essentially primarily navigating to the components section of the website. And one of them also mentioned that they would maybe navigate to the guideline section as well to look at colors and icons, but the majority of folks essentially just go straight to the component section. And here you can look further, there's a little bit more breakdown on which tabs they typically look at. So for example, all of them essentially they said they typically navigate to React tab. Majority of them would navigate to guideline tab within the components, and a few, less than half, said that they would navigate to the HTML as well as the demo tabs if available. So that kind of gives you an idea of what people are typically looking for. Now, obviously, something to keep in mind, this sample size of 9, so it's more directional than actual kind of validation of what actually happens, but it gives us a sense of potentially what areas to optimize.
Hey, Ivan, can you
Yeah.
try to zoom up your screen a little bit?
Yeah, let me.
We're having a hard time reading your slides.
yeah, let me see. Zoom in.
Yeah,
Let me.
yeah, much better.
Is this better?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. All right. Then, so some of the key areas that we found people had challenges with stemmed from navigation challenges, and those essentially came from recalling terms. So what was interesting is that the majority of the participants, over half of them, said that they struggled recalling or finding the terms that they're looking for on the PatternFly website. And those reasons varied, but the main ones included um, having, they had suggested like using visuals, for example, in order to facilitate the identification of components, because some of those terms may not necessarily be the same terms that they used in the past. One thing to note too is that experience with the Patternfly website didn't seem to have any sort of impact, as um, six of the um, uh, these 6 participants, essentially like half of them have used Patternfly website for over 3 years, and the other half has used it for less than 6 months. So it seems like it's a continuing issue regardless of how long they've used the website. This terminology recall is affecting their ability to efficiently navigate through the site. And as I mentioned, some of the terms may not always match the user's expectations. That was like one of the key things. Um, for example, like this individual called a certain item a snowman, whereas we don't call it that. So it's more like a visual term. And also, there were 2 mentions of potentially using visual representation to remove that recollection need. So essentially, like, you don't have to recall it; you can just see what it is. And I don't know exactly what's in the works, but I hear like that's potentially something in the works. I don't know if Matt, you could like speak more to it.
Yeah, we've been doing some initial explorations on how we might provide sort of a visual, like almost like a card or catalog view for the components. So still in the design stages for that. But hopefully we see that shortly.
Cool. Cool. I'm probably just gonna go over 2 other key areas of findings, just sake of time. So one thing that was interesting was that most of the people have used the search bar in order to search for different terms. And so out of the 6 people that said that they used the search bar, 4 said that they ran into difficulties while using it. So the majority of the people who said that they used it encounter issues with it. And some of the things that they mentioned were that the descriptions aren't contextual, and that they sometimes have to like, click into different ones to really see if it's the correct one. So something about the information we provide here just isn't providing them with enough context to make that right decision on where to click. And also, there were a few mentions of essentially like the search results not always having like the thing they're looking for. So, for example, this person was. This relates to the whole terminology issue that I mentioned up earlier. But for example, like somebody kind of was looking for like pop-ups. Um, and pop over, and those seem to be similar terms for them. So they tried one of them, and it just didn't pop. It didn't uh, yield in what they were looking for. Yeah, so there are areas of opportunities around the search feature as well, given people do seem to use the search bar. And the last thing I'll cover is scrolling within pages. As I mentioned earlier, like one of the main use cases is for the PatternFly website is going into the components page. And within those components page, some of them are quite long. And so I don't think this is necessarily anything new, and I'm sure some of us have probably experienced this challenge, but essentially like scrolling through the pages was mentioned as something annoying for some of the participants, and the opportunity to potentially group them in buckets or some way to reduce the amount of scrolling within pages was something that they found to be that they thought would be helpful for them. And but overall, generally speaking, although like those challenges I mentioned are areas of opportunities, people generally did find that they were able to accomplish their tasks. We found that on average, people did rate their experience using both the search feature as well as navigation bar to be on the easy side. If you look at the scale, so here is like the weighted average for their experience using the search feature, for example, and you can kind of imagine like there's this like imaginary line between like the left side, which is difficult, and on this side is easy. And if you take the weighted average of the respondents, you'll see that, for example, the search feature was 0.9, which is close to somewhat easy. It's still on the easy side though, but and same for navigation. It's a little bit closer to that midpoint where it's like neither difficult nor easy, but it still does fall on that easy side. So that being said, I think there were a lot of areas of opportunities that were identified in this study, but overall people still did find that experience using both the search bar, navigation bar, and being able to accomplish their tasks using the Patternfly website to satisfy them. So I'll probably just leave it at that, and I'll link these findings in that document, and you guys can take a look on your own on the other specific findings, like around the card sort, as well as like the terminology activity. I'll probably just leave it at that, Nicole.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And links for these things will be included at the distributions at the end of the meeting as well. All right. Next up, we are going to hear from some of the folks who've been working on some Patternfly extensions. I'm going to share my screen. Nope, that's the wrong one. Share this window. So that we have some visuals here. But let's see, I'm going to hand it off to Jessie to walk us through some of these extensions updates.
Thanks so much, Nicole. So for those of you who don't know, Patternfly extensions are kind of like Patternfly Plus. They are bigger solutions that are broader than components, whereas Patternfly is like having Legos where you can use them to build something. Extensions are like having a Lego kit where that larger solution can be built out for you. With our extensions work, we really wanted to open visibility, so it's not just Red Hat specific. Currently, a lot of these links are more Red Hat specific, but this is just a preview of the work, and we're hoping to eventually have more public-facing documentation. I'll give a high-level overview of some of the updates we've made, and then Cooper and Jeff will do a quick demo of what these look like and what these extensions basically are. To start with, we updated the visual design of Quickstarts and integrated that into a number of our products. These design changes were backed by a research study that we did to verify user expectations. We've also been working on supporting dark theme within Quickstarts and on in-context documentation, which will allow users to access specific context-related documentation to help them as they're completing tasks. This is still a work in progress, and we're likely to have more updates for you all in the future. For topology, we've significantly updated the styles and improved the performance. We also completed some design work that will allow us to integrate dark theme into topology in an upcoming sprint. And now I'd actually love to pass it off to Cooper to do some of a demo of the Quickstarts features, and then he's going to pass it off to Jeff to demo some of those topology features. So Cooper, I don't know.
All right. Yep. Thanks, Jessie. I guess I can take over the screen share. Looks like Nicole already took it down. Sorry, give me a minute. I'm getting that same permissions error I got the last time.
If you can get away with just sharing a tab, that's probably the simplest solution, I think, to this weird sharing problem.
Okay, one sec. All right, can you guys see that now?
Yes.
Great, thanks for that quick solution, Nicole. So yeah, like Jessie was saying, extensions are kind of like Patternfly Plus, and the one I've been working on mainly is called Quickstarts. And what it is essentially is this this drawer over on the right side. It's a way to display basically in-depth walkthroughs or guides to users as they're using your product. So what's going on in the main section of your screen can be anything you want, but you can trigger this right side drawer to open to help walk your users through whatever it is you're trying to teach them to do. Yeah, so some of the updates that we've made here recently are based off that research study that Jessie was talking about, which includes verifying that this header color is the best way to highlight the drawer to users, adding a couple extra features like this prerequisites drop down inside of the main section of a quick start, and then inside of like each step, adding these prerequisites, changing some alignment and text sizes, and adding things like these kind of pre-designed alerts that a content author can be writing in ASCII doc or JSON and automatically trigger those alerts in a certain set of colors. And another thing I'm excited to show off is it's not a lot of work that I did, but on the Patternfly core side, they've been working on the dark theme, and we've implemented it here inside of Quickstarts. So you can see that toggling a property here allows the package to pick up a certain set of styles, and everything changes quite nicely. So that looks pretty good. And then the other part, I'm actually going to share a different tab real quick. So like I said, the Quickstarts package is a way to show documentation to your users. The main part of it is that more in-depth walkthrough that you saw previously. But something that we're working on now is something called in-context documentation or help topics. It's basically a way if you wanted to show smaller bits of documentation or just like a term definition or something like that inside of this drawer on the right side. Basically where it wouldn't be appropriate to have a full-fledged walkthrough. It's just you need to explain to user one thing pretty quickly. So yeah, you can trigger these help topics to open in a number of ways. You can put it in a popover, put it straight in a link. But basically, it gives you a way to give a quick description of something. And then down below, you can provide other links to open another help topic or go to some external page or whatever it is you wanted to do. And dark theme also works in this context, so it's pretty nice to have that little switcher there. And I don't know, to me, dark theme is a bit easier on the eye. So yeah, that's about it from the quick start side of things. So let me know if you have any questions.
All right, Jeff, would you like to demo your awesome work with topology?
Yep, I will share. That works. Yay. Okay, so we've been working on the topology package, trying to get some styling in there. Before it was just, functionality. We want to get styling in so different groups can, conform by, use our styles, and things will look the same across all the applications. So we've created this little app which shows off all the different styles. So here's a bunch of nodes with different status styles and different shapes. These are the shapes that we support, a bunch of statuses that we support. But you can go through this, you can see, what they look like when they're selected. Status decorators, regular decorators. So we added all the styling and all these shapes so that things show up where they're supposed to. There's hover treatments. Let's see. So different kinds of labels, what they look like when you select them. They can be horizontal. They can have badges and context menus. Add little icons in front of them, and we have the ability to have secondary labels as well. Some group stylings, what groups look like when they're hovered, when they're selected, when they're a drop target, groups within groups, and then collapsible. So all these styles are provided by the package. You just have to define your data model and set things on them, and that's what causes them to have these shapes and labels and whatnot. Different kinds of styling for edges. So we have solid edges and dashed edges. So you can use those to depict different things. You have animation on the edges. See different terminal types. So you can have different arrows and circles and squares and whatever you need to help depict what you're trying to show. There's status on the terminal on the edges. And you can have tags. So that's the bulk of what we've done for the styling. There's been performance improvements as well, and that comes more in, not really as visual, but not drawing nodes that aren't on the screen. Being able to hide things. So if I bring up this little guy, if I have nodes with a lot of things on them, as they zoom out, you can't really see what they are. So we start to be able to take them away. And if I show status, so you start to lose information as they get smaller. Well, we can eventually do this. So you get some settings that are given to you, and that's by these scale settings that the application can be told, what the scale is and decide what they want to do at that scale. They might want to turn it just to the background color versus the borders. We're working on more layouts. We've gotten some good contributions lately. So trying to get the layouts to be a little more performant as well. And that should get us in pretty good shape performance-wise. Eventually, this will get up on a PatternFly org website. Right now, it's only in the repo, and you have to run locally there. But that's where we stand now. Any questions?
Jeff, if I want to copy what you have here, what's the easiest way for me to find the right code to replicate this?
So in the Patterfly React repo in the integration app, if this topology package is pretty much where you want to go. There's a big topology package file in there, and that shows you everything with how to add all these hover treatments and how to be able to reconnect nodes.
All right, great.
Great.
So for now, it's read the code, and then in the future, we're going to be adding, as you said, like really great documentation on how to follow this. You can tell there's awesome functionality. Yeah. That's cool, Jeff.
All right, thanks.
All right, I just have a quick update about future stuff. Nicole, can you share again, since I just have a 30-second ad? So in the future, Quickstarts will continue working on that in-context documentation we mentioned and ensuring support and integration for that. We'll also be looking into a grouping mechanism more to group Quickstarts together For topology, like Jeff said, we're going to continue our dark theme work to include the latest designs, as well as implement a new layout to improve topology and its performance. We're also hoping to start work on creating better documentation, as Dana said, for these extensions so that everyone can access information on these extensions on PatternFly.org. With all of that said, if anyone is interested in more info on the work being done, feel free to check out each extension's respective repos in the meantime. I've linked them in the slide, but I also put topology in the side as well, since that question came up. So just let me know if you have any other questions, but I think that is our main updates for right now.
All right, thank you. All right, next up, we are going to hear some updates from the core devs. And so Michael Coker, I think, is going to take it away.
Thank you. Okay, great, thanks. Let's see. Define my, let's see. I can't find this tab. Let's see. Okay, yeah, let's do it this way.
It's a curse.
There we go.
Too many tabs open, I guess.
Yeah, it's really bad. Yeah, first up, this isn't in the order of the agenda, but this is the tab that I could find, so apologies. It's basically just an update from our last community meeting update, where we had developed a common set of page Chrome templates for use in the HTML demos on the website. And so previously, all the demos basically had their own, for the most part, build of the page to kind of construct the look and feel of the page. And then we would put whatever's in the demo inside of it. And so to better align with what the React team is doing with their demos, we made the same update in core as they did, which is basically just to build a template that constructs the page. It's a common template, so the demos are consistent. The header items, navigation, etc., for the most part are consistent, unless, of course, that's part of the demo. So you can see that. Actually, you can't see that just yet on the website. It's going to be in our release, which should be in the next day or two, I think. I'll say loosely. So just to show an update, you shouldn't notice a difference for the most part in, let's see, I forgot that I'm sharing a tab. You shouldn't notice an update for the most part in basic demos, because the only thing that would really update is that the navigation might be a little more consistent than across demos than it was before. And then use of the header items up here, these actions and the username, etc. This is using the new masthead component in the page demo, whereas before we had a mix of masthead component and then our previously supported page header element, which was all part of the page component to build out the masthead. So all of the demos now use this masthead, should get this common look and feel. So this is just a table demo. The other update that you will see is for some of our demos, they were full page demos, but in the case of this about modal here, the full page demo previously was just the about modal in the window, and it didn't have any content behind it. So we took an opportunity to build out this as it actually should be used in a page where we have page content behind it. And another example of that is the modal component. Previously, I want to say that some of these modals were just basically modals in the page, and so now you can see that they're sitting on top of a page component that's using the comment template. So that's really cool. That'll make it more consistent for the user, easier to update and all that good stuff. And then the other item that I wanted to cover, pretty cool. They're with what we call in core form control. The React equivalent of this is the stuff that's included here. So text input is the React component. There's a form select is what it's called, and then a text area. They're just the native form elements. And the cool thing about these is that they're just that element. So it's like you don't have containers and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, well, I've got a text area and put a class on it and it looks like PatternFly. The downside to that is in that simplicity, doing things like some of this border treatment and the icons and customization on that level is difficult because these elements, at least currently, are notoriously difficult to make any sort of styling updates to. And so as a result, for these status icons, for example, and then you can use other types of icons. Pizza icon is always a favorite, I think. Those can't be images, like an image, associated with it, because you're only working with one element here. You've got an input, so how do you do that? So it's a background image. And previously, we had defined these background images using data URIs for the image, so the background image source. So it was a long encoded string of what the SVG data would represent. And that we had a product file an issue and say that they had implemented a content security policy that didn't allow the use of data URIs, periods, and background images were no exception. So they weren't getting these status icons. So we came up with a different variation of that. And it's kind of buried down here and sort of a random thing. So I wanted to call it out here just so that folks are aware that it's an option that you can use. And so basically, these are the different icons that we're using across those components. You can see it's basically a one-to-one. And the difference being these background images are no longer data URIs. Instead, we have a sprite SVG that is an externally hosted file to the input, and then in there we have sprite definitions for each of these icons, and so each state just references the icon inside of that sprite to create its background image. So that's pretty cool. If you have a content security policy, or for other reasons you'd like to just get that one file and have it serve as the image for all of these icons, feel free to use this variation. And that's it.
All right, thank you so much. Next, we'll hear from some of the React devs for some highlights for the latest work done in the React repo. I'll pass it off to Titani.
Oops, sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty. Give me a second. Okay, great. Good morning. Just give a quick overview of some of the highlights that we've been working on in the React team. Firstly, we've been working on migration to React testing library. This is a huge undertaking. And actually, Jeff will be speaking of that shortly and give some more details with the work we're doing there. I've also linked the Epic issue that's tracking all the work that's going into this effort. I just want to, sorry, excuse me, point out a benefit for migration to React testing library is that it would remove the dependency for the enzyme adapter. Enzyme adapter is not currently supported for React 18. So in order to move forward with our efforts to support React 18, we would need to remove that dependency. And this work is moving us in the right direction there. Another highlight of some work that we've been doing recently is we have enabled A11Y testing in our repo. I've linked the PR. As part of that effort, some issues were discovered and those were fixed. And another highlight is we've added a new component, a multi-file upload, which Austin will be presenting in a few minutes. And also we have updated our issue template to match what we had, what Core has done. So they updated the template, I think, last sprint, and we have done the same. So now when you create a new issue, you can either choose to create a bug report or a feature request. So there is a template of some information that you can add that will help us in triaging the issue and fixing that. And also the feature request also has its own template to highlight some information that will be useful for us in considering a new feature. Okay. And that's all I have to share. And I'm going to hand off to Jeff to give some more information about the efforts in the React testing library.
Thanks, Titani. Yeah, I can share my screen if you want.
Yep.
Thanks. All right, yeah, so this is, I'm going to share a document that Austin Sullivan worked on the PatternFly team to start here, which is a place you can go for, and I can share that link, some best practices, and I might be getting a little ahead of myself by showing this here, but basically what we've been trying to do is migrate all the enzyme tests to use React testing library, and as a part of that, Austin and I worked together to come up with some, and a lot of this was him, some of the, and I just tried to review it, you know, some of the things that to look out for, and then also just, again, best practices when writing tests using React testing library. So that's a resource that I would suggest anyone who's interested in trying to do what we're doing here to take a look at. But generally, you know, it's been, you know, and I can show a little example, I guess. I'll take a step back. So just like a quick example of a React testing library test versus an enzyme one is, this is I did a git reset to, this is kind of, this is one of the pull requests as a part of the epic that Titani mentioned, which is just, you know, rewriting all of these. So this one in particular, this test should be invalid after on blur. This is for a time picker component. And one of the main differences here is if you were to look at the diff, which, you know, I apologize, not gonna be pretty for a second here, but you can see that there's an event that gets written, and then that gets assigned to a prop called onChange, and then we're simulating a change event in order to simulate a blur, so that you know, and then simulate a blur, sorry, so that, and then we're verifying that error classes exist in the DOM. So, you know, an alternative to that is what we see here, which is what I would consider a better way of simulating those user interactions. And that's using this user event package. And we're selecting the time picker by a different means. This time we're getting it by the label text on the screen versus, well, we weren't trying to get it before, right? I think it was just by input, basically. So we're finding an input on the screen. So this time we're reading the page as if like the user is seeing that there's a label on the screen named time picker, and we're selecting it as if we are like the user seeing that on the screen. So, and then we're typing in this text, and the verification, the expectations are very similar here, but what we're doing is verifying that actually that we're seeing an invalid time format text on the screen. So that's I think a little bit more meaningful than just verifying that a class name exists in the DOM. But so a couple, I mean, that's just a quick little example. You know, and also one thing to mention is that, and I've mentioned this in a previous meeting, but you know, in this case, we're actually accessing implementation details of the component. We're accessing a prop that's actually named on change. So if ever you were to change the name of the function within the component to something that's, I don't know, on time picker change, this test would fail, but yet the component is still behaving the way that you would expect. So that's a, you know, a false negative. But it is expected to a certain extent that if you update the component, then the tests are going to break. So that it's less of a big deal, but something that we've experienced so far with our migration is that we're, you know, especially with the reviewers, actually looking at the snapshots when we're rewriting a lot of snapshot tests too, because the snapshots are actually, they're giving us the real DOM representation versus snapshots of the React component structure. So like if we look at this text input snapshot, you could see it like this is an example of what a snapshot using a, you know, an enzyme shallow or mount snapshot would, you know, like this would yield or that would yield. And then this is what you would see with React testing library, which is just, it's an input because that's actually what you would see if you were to inspect the browser, you know, once it actually gets rendered on the screen. So that's like one difference that reviewers will have to account for when looking at the diffs, when trying to update all their tests. But generally, I can get into a little bit of, and I'll open this up over here so you don't have to read it all. Yeah, I just jotted some notes down. I'll just share it. So like my general suggestion, and actually I'll just stop sharing for a second. My suggestion would be to try to take the approach, at least that seems to be working for us so far. We're about halfway along in terms of like the review of the pull requests that are open to the Patterfly React folks, but to take it one suite at a time, one testing suite at a time. So try to you know, divvy up the work, give, you know, maybe bundles of test suites to individuals to look at, try to understand the component before you try to delve into rewriting any of the tests. So actually take a look at what roles might exist, how you might select the component. So how would, like, ask yourself questions like, you know, how does the user interact with it? What are possible prop variations that the user can expect with those variations? And what are the prop variations and what can the user expect with those variations? So, you know, and that just goes to, you know, like what kind of presentation are you expecting the user to see? And if there isn't anything presentational, then you can revert to testing, verifying class names possibly, or some other details within the DOM that the user just might not have visibility of, like whether or not, there just could be like a display none style that's appended to the component that you want to verify. Like that's perfectly acceptable, but ideally you want to focus on what the user sees. And that's going to be a part of the challenge, I think, in rewriting some of these tests for some people, is the mentality shift between previously testing implementation details and now trying to think about how the user interacts with components, instead of focusing on, what a function is supposed to behave like within the component, because that's a detail that, if it is something that you want to test, it should be abstracted into a helper function or a custom hook, and that should be tested separately and focused on in that way. So, so there's, multiple ways you can do this, but I think, first trying to rewrite tests and just make them a one-to-one relationship there as much as possible to the existing tests that you have that are written in Enzyme, write them with React Testing Library, and those, if you have a lot of snapshot tests, that should be fairly simple if they're not focused on implementation details. But if they are focused on implementation details and they're quite hefty, it's not going to be a fun time to try to interpret, how that correlates to something that would be written in React Testing Library. But yeah, so another, a few other things to challenges, or and we're trying to approach this after we get that first pass of trying to write tests that are symmetrical to the ones that are written in Enzyme. But after the fact, we're going to take a look at the snapshot tests that we have, which are plentiful within PatternFly, and assess whether or not they're, either they're misleading or resulting in false positives or false negatives, and possibly just clean some of them up if we feel as though we can better write them in a different way. I think it's an opportunity for a lot of teams to just reassess what they've been testing, and not just I guess bank on the idea that the snapshots that they've been updating whenever they update the component are actually testing the things that they expect them to anymore. So from there, I'll say that some future follow-up work after you get to that point where you rewrite them all and get them in a good state. And again, I think it should be taken, one test suite at a time, would be to, determine if you have any duplication of tests to try to, clean things up a bit, try to write new tests that focus on user experience rather than how the functions behave. Again, I'll say abstract those functions within those components that you feel might, if a component is so heavily involved in logic, then I think it would make sense to abstract that to verify that, since again the React Testing Library is focused on what the user sees, not how the component what the functions are supposed to do necessarily, or what the events are supposed to look like. Those are finite or too fine of details, I should say. And then, lastly, I'll say that integration tests take quite a long time to run in comparison to unit tests. So I think that another path would be to determine, and possibly you try to do this all at the same time, and that might be a little too much, but figure out if there's any overlap in the integration tests that you have, and our React Testing Library I think offers, at least in some cases, a substitute for some integration tests, and they will definitely run a lot faster for you. So it's an opportunity to improve your build speed. I think, again, spruce up your tests and the effectiveness of them. And that'll only add to your, confidence, your confidence level and less bugs, I think, going forward. So I'll stop my ramble there. If you have any questions, let me know. Hello, Ron.
Yeah, thanks.
Hello.
I do. Thank you. You were referring to accessing internal implementation and breakage as a result. And I understand that when writing tests, it's the choice of referring to internal implementation. It's not always a hard choice. So with the gradient, as you said, sometimes you would go to, as the user would see it, you would try and select text up of the screen. Sometimes you would traverse the DOM via class names. So as a developer, I wouldn't refer to class names, but OUIA hooks. So should I take this as, should developers combine this approach with those hooks to refer in the DOM, traversing up until they have this element which has the readable text or the valuable input to the user? And should these two approaches be combined? Because I don't want to be referring to class names, obviously. Does it make sense?
I think I might need a little bit more clarity, but I'll say that class names as selectors is not a path of recommendation, and hopefully that the document that I shared in the chat here will illuminate that. But so you typically you shouldn't have to traverse any through any sort of iteration to too much so to get to the element that is desirable for you to test. So right. Maybe you could give me another example or elaborate a bit more, because I'm not 100% sure I understand your question.
Yeah, I don't think I have another example. It was an abstract case. I was just thinking about how should we not, how can we not encounter these cases when we write a test and then the component implementation changes and the test is broken, so producing false positives or negatives. So maybe we could do that if we refer to this implementation that we do not expect it to change. So OUIA hooks, we do not expect them to change because this is a contract between the QE and the developers.
Oh, okay.
So we could rely on that as a stable point.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay, so I think those are stable, and you can rely on them so long as someone doesn't remove them from the implementation. But I think an even more reliable source would be to actually get, so like if you have a header, for instance, like an H1 tag, then you can use a selector that is get by role, and the first parameter of that would be heading. So it actually should autofill. It gives you a list of all the possible roles that you can select a component by, and selecting the role by heading would then, I think that is the root of what you want. Like now you're circumventing having to apply an additional property to the component in order to select it. You're getting it by the tag that should be the least changing part of the component.
I get it. So it's a choice. Okay, thank you. I don't want to take any more time. So if there are any more questions.
We are up at time. So we had a couple extra things we wanted to get to this community meeting. And what I'm going to do is Austin has a new component he wants to demo quickly, and I'm going to let him do that. We have on the slide deck some of the work that Patternfly has upcoming that Matt has graciously kind of put in bullet form. So anyone who has the slide deck up could reference those. Our next community meeting is in just a few weeks, so it's not as long of a stretch as usual. So I think we'll rely on the fact that that's coming up soon to give us some time to give you more windows in the future of what we're working on. But let's have Austin demo his new component, and then that'll be the meeting today.
Don't forget about the office hours tomorrow.
There are also office hours tomorrow. Yes, so we could also talk more about lots of fun things that are coming up then. Take it away, Austin.
All right, thanks, Nicole. So, multiple file upload. As it says on the tin, it allows users to upload multiple files at once. It supports receiving files via clicking this upload button and selecting them, or dropping files into its drop zone like so. And it uses the same library to support those interactions that the existing single file upload does. So any customization you can do to that library on that component, you can do here as well. Upon receiving a file, it renders one of these status items, and the built-in functionality will automatically display the file name, the file size in a human-readable format, and the percentage of the file that's been read into memory. Once the file is finished being read, it makes a data URI available for the developer. And if an error is encountered during the file reading process, this progress bar will turn red, and this will be an X rather than a check mark. If the user wants to remove a file that they've uploaded, they can just click this and it goes away. And also, these status items are fully customizable, and developers can display anything that they want for the file name, size, the percentage uploaded. They can handle the processing of the file in any way. So this can essentially just be used as a dumb display component. Also, a horizontal design is available for limited screen real estate applications. I think that's about as quick as I can run through that.
Well, it's definitely not a dumb display component, so it's doing a lot of fun things. I see your note, Garrett. That's an interesting note. We will definitely chat about that. But yeah, does anybody have any questions? I know some products were highly anticipating this component coming out, so it's been released, still in beta. So we'd love people to play with it and let us know, give us feedback, find the bugs that I'm sure Austin has zero of. So there's that, but okay. Yes, there is office hours tomorrow. They will run from 11 to 12. And there are a few discussion questions, topics on the collected ideas sheet Google Doc that we have started. I doubt it will take a full hour, but usually the React devs or the Patternfly devs stay on the call for, or at least some of us stay on the call for the full hour in case anyone wants to just pop by and chat or ask questions until noon. So know that even if you had something you wanted to talk about, you don't have to show up right at the beginning necessarily. But we prioritize the topics that are presented or proposed ahead of time. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. I will send out a follow-up email to the Patternfly list with links and recordings and everything that we covered today. So look forward to that. And thanks for your time. I'll see you at the end of the month.
Thank you.